Redemption Creek, Montana Territory, April 1878. The spring wind carried dust and disdain through the main street of Redemption Creek as Logan Webster guided his bay mare toward the mercantile. At 25, Logan had learned that survival on the frontier meant keeping to yourself, trusting no one, and never letting sentiment cloud judgment. Love was a luxury for men who did not know the sting of betrayal, and Logan knew it better than most. 3 years ago, the woman he had planned to marry left him standing at the altar, choosing instead a banker from San Francisco with deeper pockets and softer hands. Since then, Logan had built a successful horse ranch 10 miles outside town, worked himself to exhaustion every day, and convinced himself that the solitary life was the only honest one. A man alone could not be wounded. A man alone stayed strong. He dismounted outside the general store, his tall frame casting a shadow across the weathered boards. Logan kept himself clean-shaven except for the slight stubble that appeared by afternoon, wore a dark Stetson that had seen better days, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his worth even if he no longer believed in sharing it. His eyes, a clear blue that women once remarked upon, had grown distant. He saw the world as a series of transactions now, feed for horses, supplies for the ranch, hired hands to manage but never befriend. The door chimed as he entered, and immediately the conversation inside died. Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, stood near the fabric bolts with 2 other town ladies, all 3 staring toward the back corner where a young woman knelt, scrubbing the floor with determined strokes. Logan recognized the pattern. Redemption Creek had found someone new to despise. "It is shameful," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice pitched to Carrie, allowing her to remain in decent society. "If I ran this establishment, I would never permit such a person to work here." The young woman did not look up, just kept scrubbing. Logan collected what he needed, noting the girl only peripherally. She wore a faded blue calico dress, mended carefully at the seams, and her hair, a warm brown like honey held up to sunlight, was pinned severely back beneath a plain bonnet. She could not have been more than 21 or 22. At the counter, Logan paid for his supplies and asked Mr. Dalton, the store owner, "Who is she?" Dalton glanced toward the back, then lowered his voice. "Clara Lawson. Been in town about 2 months, lives in that linta behind the church, does cleaning work when she can get it." He paused, then added with clear distaste, "She has got a child, no husband. Says he died, but she has got no papers, no proof. Arrived here with nothing but that baby and a carpetbag." Logan felt the familiar walls in his chest reinforcing themselves. This was exactly the kind of complication he avoided. A woman with a scandalous past, likely a liar, certainly trouble. He tipped his hat and left without another glance, but something about the scene nagged at him during the ride home. Not the woman herself, he told himself, but the casual cruelty of it. Redemption Creek prided itself on being a God-fearing town, yet those women had spoken loud enough to ensure their contempt was felt. He remembered being on the receiving end of town gossip after his failed wedding, the pitying looks and whispered comments. He had hated it. The thought irritated him. He had no business concerning himself with some woman's troubles. He had horses to train, fences to mend, a life carefully constructed around the principle of self-reliance. 2 weeks later, Logan returned to town for supplies and found Clara Lawson sitting on the church steps, her face buried in her hands. A small baby, perhaps 6 or 7 months old, slept in a wooden crate beside her, wrapped in threadbare blankets. Clara's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Logan should have walked past. Every instinct told him to keep moving, but his feet stopped of their own accord. "Miss Lawson," he said, keeping his voice neutral. She looked up, startled, and quickly wiped her eyes. In the daylight, he could see she was younger than he had thought, probably not yet 21. Her face was beautiful despite the exhaustion etched into it, with delicate features and large brown eyes that held too much sorrow for someone so young. Those eyes met his with wariness, the look of someone accustomed to judgment. "Yes," her voice was soft but steady, "you appear troubled." A bitter laugh escaped her. "That is an understatement, Mr. Webster." She knew his name then, small towns. "Mrs. Patterson convinced the church board that I am an unsuitable influence. They want me out of the linta by Sunday. I have nowhere to go." Logan felt that tug again, that irritating pull toward involvement. "What about work?" "Mr. Dalton let me go from the mercantile. Mrs. Patterson is friends with his wife. I have inquired at every establishment in town. No one will hire me." She looked down at the sleeping baby, her daughter from the look of her. "I tried, Mr. Webster, I truly tried." The smart thing would be to offer sympathy and move along. Instead, Logan heard himself saying, "I need someone at my ranch." Clara's head snapped up. "What?" He was already regretting the words, but he continued anyway. "My housekeeper quit last month, took a position in Helena. I need cooking, cleaning, laundry. There is a small cabin on the property, separate from the main house. It needs work, but it is sound. You would have privacy. Wages would be $30 a month plus room and board." Clara stared at him as if he had sprouted wings. "You are serious?" "I do not joke about business arrangements." Even as he said it, Logan wondered what he was doing. This was exactly the kind of complication he had avoided for 3 years. Think it over. "I will be in town until this afternoon." He walked away before she could respond, before he could change his mind. 3 hours later, as Logan loaded the last of his supplies onto the wagon, Clara approached with the baby on her hip and that carpet bag in her other hand. The late afternoon sun caught the brown of her hair, revealing hints of gold he had not noticed before. "Mr. Webster," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "if your offer still stands, I would like to accept. I will work hard. I promise you that you will not regret this." Logan looked at her, this young woman the town had condemned, holding her child with fierce protectiveness, and felt something crack in the walls around his heart. He ignored it. "Be ready at dawn tomorrow. I will pick you up here." That night, alone in his ranch house, Logan questioned his sanity. He had survived 3 years by keeping the world at arm's length. Now he was bringing a woman and a baby into his daily life, a woman with secrets and scandal attached to her name. It went against every principle he had adopted. But he also remembered the determination in Clara's face, the way she had not made excuses or begged, just stated facts. And he remembered those women in the mercantile, their casual cruelty. Maybe that was why he did it. Not because he believed in second chances or redemption or any of that nonsense, but because he understood what it meant to be judged unfairly. That was all, a simple act of fairness, nothing more. He refused to examine why that explanation felt hollow. The next morning arrived cool and clear, the sky that impossible blue that made Montana territory feel like a painting. Logan drove the wagon into town just after dawn, half expecting Clara to have changed her mind. But she was waiting on the church steps, the baby bundled against her chest, that same carpetbag beside her. She had braided her brown hair, and it hung over one shoulder, thick and gleaming in the early light. The faded blue dress was clean and carefully pressed. She had made an effort, and something about that touched him despite his resolve to keep this purely professional. "Miss Lawson," he said, climbing down to help with her bag. "Mr. Webster." She allowed him to assist her onto the wagon seat, settling the baby between them. "This is Emma, my daughter." Emma had her mother's brown eyes in a cap of soft dark hair. She regarded Logan with solemn curiosity, then stuck a fist in her mouth. They rode in silence for the first mile, the wagon creaking along the rutted road. The town disappeared behind them, and Logan felt Clara relax incrementally, her shoulders losing some of their rigid tension. "Your ranch," she finally said, "is it far?" "About 8 miles. We will be there by mid-morning." He kept his eyes on the road. "The cabin needs cleaning. I will help you get settled before I show you the main house." "You do not have to explain the rules, Mr. Webster. I understand my position. I will keep to the cabin, do my work, and stay out of your way. You are taking a considerable risk employing me, and I am grateful." The resignation in her voice bothered him. "What happened to your husband?" He felt her stiffen beside him. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "William died of pneumonia 8 months ago, just after Emma was born. We were traveling to Oregon. He was a blacksmith, had a position waiting in Portland. When he died, we were in a small settlement in Idaho Territory. I had no money for passage back east, barely enough to bury him. I worked there for a while, but the winter was harsh, and she paused. "I made poor choices, trusted the wrong people. By the time I reached Montana, I had nothing left but Emma in that bag." Logan heard what she did not say. The gaps in her story, the defensive set of her shoulders, the expectation of disbelief. Whether her tale was entirely true did not matter to him. He had hired her to do a job. Her past was her own business. There are no marriage papers, he said, not a question. They were stolen along with everything else of value I possessed. William's tools, my mother's Bible, his death certificate, everything. Her voice hardened. I know what people think, I know what I look like to them. But Emma is my daughter and William was my husband, and that is the truth whether anyone believes it or not. Logan nodded slowly. I believe you. Clara turned to stare at him, her eyes wide with surprise. You do. A woman lying about a dead husband would invent a more convincing story. She would have papers, tears, details designed to elicit sympathy. You just stated facts. He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the horses. Besides, I do not much care what the truth is. You work hard, keep the house clean, cook decent meals, that is all I need. Your past is your own. Something shifted in the air between them. Clara said nothing, but when Logan looked over, he saw tears streaming silently down her face. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. I apologize, she whispered. It has been so long since anyone, she could not finish. Logan felt that crack in his walls widen slightly. He ignored it with effort. This was business, practicality, nothing more. The ranch appeared as they crested a rise, sprawling out before them in the valley below. Logan had built it from nothing over the past 3 years, pouring all his anger and hurt into creating something solid and real. The main house was modest but well constructed, 2 stories with a wide porch. Several corrals spread out behind it, currently holding about 24 horses in various stages of training. 2 barns, a bunkhouse, and a small cabin completed the layout. It is beautiful, Clara said softly. Pride warmed Logan's chest. It serves its purpose. He drove directly to the cabin, a single-room structure about 100 yards from the main house. It was small but sturdily built, with a stone fireplace, a window facing east, and a narrow porch. Inside, dust covered everything and the air smelled stale and unused. Clara stepped inside with Emma and turned in a slow circle. This is mine. Yours and Emma's. I will bring in a bed from storage, a table, chairs, whatever you need. He watched her trail a hand along the fireplace mantel, leaving a clean streak in the dust. It is not much. It is perfect. Clara's voice was thick with emotion. Mr. Webster, I cannot express what this means to me, having a place of my own, somewhere safe for Emma. Work starts tomorrow, Logan said gruffly, uncomfortable with her gratitude. Today, get settled. I will bring supplies and furniture this afternoon. He left before she could thank him again, heading to the main house with that uncomfortable warmth still lodged in his chest. This was not what he had planned. This was not the isolated, self-sufficient life he had constructed. But watching Clara's face as she surveyed that dusty little cabin, seeing hope return to her eyes, something in him had responded despite all his defenses. It was just compassion, he told himself, basic human decency. It did not mean he was softening. It did not mean he was letting anyone in. He had 3 years of evidence proving that isolation was safer than connection. Nothing had changed, but over the next weeks everything changed. Clara proved to be an exceptional housekeeper and a surprisingly talented cook. She arrived at the main house each morning just after dawn, Emma secured in a sling against her chest, and transformed Logan's neglected home into something warm and welcoming. She scrubbed floors until they gleamed, organized his chaotic kitchen, mended clothes he had written off as ruined. The meals she prepared were simple but delicious, far better than the burnt bacon and weak coffee he had been surviving on. But it was not her competence that unsettled him. It was her presence. Clara moved through the house with quiet efficiency, humming softly to Emma while she worked. She left wildflowers in a jar on the kitchen table. She started leaving fresh biscuits wrapped in cloth for him to take on morning rides. Small gestures that made the house feel less like a structure and more like a home. Logan did not want to notice. He maintained careful distance, eating his meals quickly and retreating to the barn or the corrals. He interacted with Clara only when necessary, keeping his tone professional, his manner distant. But he noticed anyway. He noticed how the morning light caught her brown hair when she hung laundry on the line. He noticed the patient tenderness with which she cared for Emma, singing to her, playing peekaboo that made the baby giggle. He noticed the intelligence in Clara's eyes when she asked thoughtful questions about the ranch, the horses, his work. And he noticed how the other ranchers and townspeople treated her on the rare occasions she accompanied him to town. 6 weeks after Clara started working at the ranch, Logan brought her along to pick up supplies, figuring she could select what was needed for the household better than he could. Emma rode between them as usual, now nearly 9 months old and beginning to babble cheerfully. In town, the reaction was immediate and hostile. Men looked away. Women crossed the street to avoid them. In the mercantile, Mrs. Patterson made a show of gathering her skirts as if Clara's mere presence might contaminate her. "I see you are keeping questionable company now, Mr. Webster," Mrs. Patterson said loudly. "One wonders about a man who associates with such women." Logan felt anger flash hot through him. Before he could respond, Clara touched his arm gently, shaking her head. "It does not matter," she whispered. "I am accustomed to it." But it did matter. It mattered more than Logan wanted to admit. They completed their shopping in tense silence, Clara keeping her eyes down, her shoulders hunched as if bracing against blows. Logan carried the supplies to the wagon, his jaw tight with fury. Not at Clara, but at the sanctimonious hypocrites who judged her without knowing her story, who treated her like a disease instead of a person. On the ride home, Clara was quiet, Emma asleep in her arms. The baby looked peaceful, unaware of the ugliness swirling around her mother. "I apologize," Clara finally said. "I should not have come. My presence reflects badly on you. I understand if you wish to terminate my employment." Logan pulled the horses to a stop, turning to face her. "Why would I terminate your employment? You heard Mrs. Patterson. People will talk. They will assume," she trailed off, her cheeks coloring, "they will assume I am providing services beyond housekeeping. Your reputation will suffer." "My reputation weathered worse when I was left at the altar 3 years ago. I survived the gossip then, I will survive it now." He saw her eyes widen at this revelation. "Clara, I do not give a damn what Mrs. Patterson or anyone else in that town thinks. You do good work. You have turned my house into a home, that is what matters." "But she is right in a way," Clara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I am not respectable, I am exactly what they think I am." "And what is that?" She looked away, tears gathering. "A woman who made mistakes, who was foolish and desperate and did things I am ashamed of." Logan felt that crack in his walls widen into a chasm. This woman, who had been nothing but dignified and hardworking since arriving at his ranch, believed the cruelty hurled at her. She had internalized the judgment, accepted it as truth. "Everyone makes mistakes," he said quietly. "That does not define who you are." "That is generous, Mr. Webster, but we both know the world does not work that way. Women like me do not get second chances. The fact that you gave me one is more than I deserve." Something in her resignation sparked something in him, something he had buried under 3 years of cynicism and self-protection. The belief that people could be better than their worst moments, the hope that connection might be worth the risk. "What if you are wrong?" Logan heard himself say. "What if you deserve more than you think? What if the people in that town are too small-minded to see what is actually in front of them?" Clara looked at him with those large brown eyes, surprise and confusion warring in their depths. "What do you mean?" "I mean that in 6 weeks you have proven yourself to be hardworking, capable, intelligent, and devoted to your daughter. I mean that you have never once complained about the work or asked for anything beyond what was agreed upon. I mean that you deserve to be treated with basic human respect, regardless of your past." "You do not know my past." "No," Logan agreed, "and I do not need to. I know who you are now." "That is enough." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken things. Clara wiped at her eyes, then managed a tremulous smile. "Thank you, Mr. Webster. That is the kindest thing anyone has said to me in longer than I can remember." Logan clicked the horses back into motion, uncomfortable with the emotion crackling between them. He had said too much, revealed too much. He needed to rebuild his walls, re-establish the professional distance that had kept him safe. But as they rode home, Clara sitting beside him with Emma in her arms, sunlight turning her brown hair to gold, Logan realized his walls were already crumbling. And he was not certain he wanted to rebuild them. That evening, after Clara had returned to her cabin and the ranch had settled into quiet, Logan sat on his porch and forced himself to confront the truth he had been avoiding. He was developing feelings for Clara Lawson. Not just attraction, though he had noticed her beauty from the start, not just respect, though her competence and work ethic impressed him, something deeper and more dangerous. He found himself thinking about her when she was not around. Looking forward to breakfast because it meant her presence in his kitchen. Noticing small details like the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when concentrating, or how her entire face softened when Emma laughed. This was exactly what he had vowed to avoid. After being left at the altar, Logan had promised himself never again. Love was for fools who believed in fairy tales. Trust was a luxury the frontier could not afford. He had built his life around these principles, around the cold comfort of isolation. But Clara was dismantling those principles just by existing in his space, by being kind and present and real. She did not fit his defensive narrative. She was not using him or planning to leave. She was just a young woman trying to survive and protect her child, doing it with grace and dignity despite the world's cruelty. And he was falling for her. The realization terrified him. Logan stood abruptly as if physical movement could outrun the emotion. It could not, of course. The feeling had taken root and no amount of distance would kill it now. He looked across the yard toward Clara's cabin. Soft lamplight glowed in the window. He could picture her inside, rocking Emma to sleep, perhaps mending by the fire. A domestic scene that should not appeal to him but did with startling intensity. Logan forced himself back inside his house, determined to regain control. He would maintain professional distance. He would not allow sentiment to cloud his judgment. He had survived heartbreak once, he would not invite it again. But that night, alone in his bed, he dreamed of brown hair catching sunlight and eyes that looked at him like he was someone worth believing in. Summer arrived in full force, bringing long days and warm nights. The ranch thrived. Logan's reputation as a horse trainer brought buyers from as far as Wyoming, and his stock commanded premium prices. He hired 2 more hands to help with the increased workload, both young men who treated Clara with cautious respect after Logan made it clear that disrespect would not be tolerated. Clara bloomed in the Montana sunshine. Her face lost its pinched, desperate look. She smiled more easily, laughed at Emma's antics, moved with less wariness. The cabin became a true home, with curtains she had sewn herself, a small garden out front, and Emma's baby things organized neatly in one corner. Logan watched the transformation with satisfaction and growing longing. He still maintained careful distance, but it grew harder each day. Especially when Clara started joining him on the porch some evenings after Emma was asleep, sitting in comfortable silence and watching the stars emerge. "I never thanked you properly," Clara said one such evening in late June, "for giving me this chance." "You have thanked me dozens of times," Logan replied, keeping his eyes on the horizon. "Your work is thanks enough. It is more than that, though. You saw me when no one else would. When everyone else saw scandal and shame, you saw a person. That matters more than you know." Logan risked a glance at her. She had let her hair down and it fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a simple cotton dress, faded but clean, and held a cup of coffee in both hands. In the fading light, she looked impossibly young and beautiful. "I saw someone who needed help," he said, forcing his voice to remain neutral. "Nothing more complicated than that." "I think it is more complicated." Clara turned to face him. "I have watched you with the horses, with your men, with me. You pretend to be cold and practical, but you are not. You are kind, you care, you just hide it behind gruffness." "You are mistaken." "Am I?" She smiled slightly. "Then why did you spend 2 hours repairing Emma's crib last week when you could have just bought a new one? Why do you leave extra firewood by my door before storms? Why do you make sure I have the best cuts of meat, the freshest vegetables?" Logan had no answer that would not reveal too much. He stood abruptly. "It is late, you should get back to Emma." He walked away before Clara could respond, before she could see how her words affected him. But he felt her eyes on his back, felt the weight of things unspoken hanging between them. That night, Logan lay awake for hours, fighting a losing battle with himself. He could not keep pretending that Clara was just his housekeeper, that his interest was purely practical. He was in love with her. Completely, terrifyingly in love, but what could he offer her? His heart had been broken before. He carried that wound still, and Clara had been through her own hell, had been judged and discarded by society. Did she need another complication? Did she even see him as anything beyond an employer? The questions circled endlessly, offering no answers. The next morning, everything changed. Logan was working with a particularly stubborn 2-year-old gelding in the main corral when a fancy carriage rolled up the drive. Unusual but not unheard of, wealthy buyers sometimes arrived unannounced. He secured the gelding and walked to greet the visitors. A well-dressed man in his 50s stepped down, followed by a younger woman in an expensive traveling suit. They both had the polished look of city money, out of place against the rough frontier setting. "Mr. Webster," the man said, "my name is Charles Lawson. This is my daughter, Beatrice. We are looking for someone and we were told she might be working here. A young woman named Clara Lawson, with a baby girl." Logan's blood ran cold. Lawson, the same surname as Clara, family, trouble, both. "Who told you to look here?" he asked carefully. "The woman at the mercantile, Mrs. Patterson." She was quite eager to share Clara's whereabouts. Charles Lawson's expression was stern. "Is she here?" Before Logan could respond, Clara emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. She saw the visitors and stopped dead, all color draining from her face. "Father," she whispered. The air turned thick with tension. Beatrice Lawson looked at her sister with undisguised contempt. Charles's face remained impassive, but his voice was cold when he spoke. "Clara, so this is where you have been hiding." "I am not hiding, I am working, supporting myself and Emma." Clara's voice shook but held firm. "What are you doing here?" "Your mother is ill, she has been asking for you." Charles's jaw tightened. "I promised her I would find you, though God knows you do not deserve her concern. After what you did, the scandal you brought on our family, you should be grateful we acknowledge you at all." Logan moved to stand beside Clara, a protective instinct he did not bother to analyze. "Miss Lawson is my employee. If you have business with her, conduct it respectfully." Beatrice laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Miss Lawson, is that what she is calling herself? Did she tell you she was married, Mr. Webster? That story about the dead husband?" "Beatrice, enough," Charles said, though without much force. "No," Beatrice stepped forward, her eyes hard. "He should know the truth, there was no husband. William was a farmhand who seduced Clara with pretty words and empty promises. When she got pregnant, he disappeared. Father tried to arrange a marriage to save her reputation, but Clara refused. She ran away instead, taking our mother's jewelry to fund her escape. She is a thief as well as a fallen woman." Clara's face had gone from white to red, tears streaming down her cheeks. She looked at Logan and he saw shame and fear and desperation in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "let me explain." But Logan's mind was reeling. No husband, no widow struggling with tragic loss, just a girl who had been seduced and abandoned, and the jewelry had everything she told him been a lie. The walls he had been trying so hard to keep down slammed back into place, reinforced by the old pain of betrayal. She had lied to him, just like Sarah had lied, standing in front of the whole town and promising to love him before running off with someone else. He had opened himself to this woman, let her into his carefully guarded life, and she had been deceiving him from the start. "Mr. Webster," Clara said, her voice breaking, "please listen. I can explain everything." "I think your family has explained enough." Logan heard the coldness in his own voice and welcomed it. Cold was safe. Cold was what he should have maintained all along. "You have the rest of the day to pack your things. I will give you a month's wages. That should be enough to get you wherever you are going." "Logan, please." Clara actually used his first name, which she had never done before. "I did not lie about the important things. I am a good worker. I have done everything you asked. Emma and I have nowhere to go." "You can come home," Charles said. "Your mother wants to see you. We will not turn you away, though you will live under our rules. No more running. No more scandal." Clara looked between her father and Logan, trapped. Logan forced himself to turn away, to walk back toward the corrals. If he looked at her tear-stained face any longer, he would waver, he would forgive her. He would be a fool all over again. "You have until tonight," he said over his shoulder. "Be gone by morning." He spent the rest of the day in the far pastures, working himself into exhaustion so he would not have to think. But he could not escape the image of Clara's face, the devastation in her eyes, could not stop hearing her whispered plea. When he finally returned to the ranch house as dusk fell, the main house was spotlessly clean as always. A covered plate sat on the kitchen table with a note, "Your dinner, I am sorry, Clara." Logan looked across the yard to the cabin. Lamplight still glowed in the window, he could see shadows moving inside. Clara, packing up her life again, taking Emma back into uncertainty and shame. He sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, that plate of food untouched. What had he done? Yes, Clara had lied about her circumstances, but had the core of who she was changed? Was she not still the same hard-working, devoted mother who had transformed his house and, if he was honest, his life? The knock on the door startled him. He opened it to find not Clara but one of his ranch hands, young Tommy Wilson. "Mr. Webster, sir, I know it is not my place, but I heard what happened today." "The family that came," Tommy twisted his hat in his hands. "I just wanted to say Miss Clara has been nothing but kind to me and Jack. She is a good woman. Whatever her past, she has been respectful and hardworking here. It seems wrong to send her away." Logan stared at the young man, surprised by his boldness. "You are right, it is not your place." "Yes, sir, I apologize, but I have a sister back in Kansas who got herself in trouble. Baby's father left just like what happened to Miss Clara. My sister was not a bad person. She was just young and foolish and believed a man's lies. Seems to me that does not make her worthless. Seems to me a good man would see past the mistake to the person underneath." Tommy left before Logan could respond, but his words hung in the air like a challenge. Logan stood on his porch, looking across at Clara's cabin again. The lamp still burned. She was awake, probably wondering where she would go, how she would protect Emma from a world determined to punish her for one mistake. And Logan realized with sudden, painful clarity that he was being exactly like the people in town. Exactly like Sarah, who had judged him and found him wanting. He was reducing Clara to her worst moment instead of seeing all the evidence of who she actually was. She had lied about being married, but why? To protect herself and Emma, to have even a chance at employment and respectability. Not to hurt anyone, not for profit or malice, out of desperation and the simple desire to survive, and everything else about her had been real, her work ethic, her kindness, her quiet strength. The way she made his house feel like a home. The way she made him feel like maybe he could trust again, maybe he could believe in something beyond isolation. He had pushed her away not because she had actually betrayed him, but because he was terrified. Terrified of being hurt again, terrified of vulnerability. So he had seized on her lie as an excuse to rebuild his walls, to retreat back into the cold safety of solitude, but that safety was a prison. He saw it now with sudden, devastating clarity. He had spent 3 years telling himself that being alone was strength, that not needing anyone was freedom, but it was not freedom, it was slow death. It was letting one person's betrayal poison everything good that might come after. Clara was not Sarah. Clara was a scared young mother who had made mistakes and was trying desperately to build something better. She was brave and hardworking and kind. She looked at him like he was someone worth believing in because she saw past his walls to the person underneath. She saw potential in him that he had stopped seeing in himself. And he had seen potential in her that everyone else ignored. Not because he was noble or generous, but because somewhere deep down, past all his defenses, he recognized a kindred spirit. Someone else wounded by the world's cruelty, trying to survive, trying to be better than the hand they had been dealt. Logan was off the porch and across the yard before he fully realized he had made a decision. He knocked on Clara's door, his heart hammering. She opened it, eyes red from crying, Emma asleep on her shoulder. Her face was so young and vulnerable that it physically hurt to look at her. "Mr. Webster, I am nearly packed. I will be gone by dawn as you asked." "I do not want you to go," Logan said. Clara blinked. "What?" "I do not want you to go," he repeated, more firmly this time. "I was angry and I reacted poorly. I let old wounds control me instead of seeing clearly. I am sorry, Clara. You did lie, but I understand why. And it does not change the fact that you are an excellent housekeeper and a good person. Please stay." Fresh tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. Are you certain? My father is right, I am a scandal. I did steal my mother's jewelry, though I only took what was mine by right, what my grandmother left me. And yes, I lied about William. He was not a husband. He was a farmhand who said he loved me, who promised we would marry, and then disappeared the moment he learned I was pregnant. I lied because I was ashamed. I lied because I knew no one would hire me if they knew the truth, but I never lied about my work or my character. I never lied about who I am as a person. Logan stepped closer, drawn by the raw honesty in her voice. I know, I see who you are, Clara. I have seen it from the first day, even when I was trying not to. You are strong and capable and devoted to Emma. You made mistakes, but you are not defined by them. You are more than your past. Why does that matter to you? Clara searched his face. Why do you care? This was the moment, the cliff edge. Logan could step back, keep things professional, maintain his walls. Or he could step forward into vulnerability, into risk, into the terrifying possibility of connection. He chose to step forward. Because I love you, Logan said, and the words felt like breaking and healing at once. I did not want to, I fought it. I have spent 3 years building walls to protect myself from being hurt again, but you climbed right over those walls just by being yourself, by being kind and present and real. I love you, Clara, and I do not want you to leave. I want you to stay here not as my housekeeper but as my wife, if you will have me. Clara's eyes went wide with shock. Emma stirred on her shoulder, making small sleeping sounds. The lamplight cast golden shadows across the cabin walls. You cannot mean that, Clara whispered. You cannot want to marry me. I am ruined. I have a child out of wedlock, your reputation. To hell with my reputation. To hell with what the town thinks. Logan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hand. I want you, Clara, you and Emma. I want us to be a family. I want to wake up to your presence every day and fall asleep knowing you are safe and cared for. I want to raise Emma together and maybe, if you want, have more children. I want a life with you. A real life, not this half-existence I have been living. Logan, Clara breathed his name like a prayer, leaning into his touch. I love you too. I have loved you for weeks but never dreamed you might feel the same. I thought I was just your housekeeper. I thought I was lucky to even have that. You are so much more than a housekeeper. Logan moved his thumb across her cheekbone, wiping away tears. You are the woman who made me believe in second chances, who made me believe that maybe, just maybe, love is worth the risk. Clara set Emma down gently in her crib, then turned back to Logan. She reached up and touched his face with tentative fingers as if confirming he was real. Yes, she said softly. Yes, I will marry you if you are certain, if you truly want this. I have never been more certain of anything. Logan pulled her into his arms and Clara came willingly, burying her face in his chest. He held her close, feeling her shoulders shake with silent sobs, and knew they were tears of relief and hope rather than sadness. They stood like that for a long moment, two wounded people finding healing in each other's embrace. Outside, the Montana night was vast and star-filled. Inside, the lamplight cast a warm glow over the start of something new. The next morning, Logan accompanied Clara to meet with her father before the Lawsons departed. Charles had stayed at the hotel in town overnight and his expression was stern when Logan and Clara entered the small room. Father, Clara said, her voice steady despite her nervousness, I want you to know that Mr. Webster has asked me to marry him and I have accepted. Emma and I will be staying here. We have found a home. Charles looked between them, his face unreadable. Finally he sighed, I see. Well, I cannot say I am surprised. I could see how that cowboy looked at you yesterday. He turned to Logan. You understand what you're taking on, the scandal, the gossip. I understand that I am marrying a remarkable woman who has overcome more hardship than most people face in a lifetime, Logan said firmly. Whatever gossip exists will fade. Clara's character speaks for itself. Charles nodded slowly. Very well, I suppose this is better than the alternatives. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small bundle of papers. These are yours, Clara, your grandmother's inheritance documentation. The jewelry you took was legally yours, as is the money from its sale. I should have made that clear years ago. My pride got in the way. Clara took the papers with shaking hands. Father, Your mother wants you to write, Charles interrupted. She wants to know Emma to be part of her granddaughter's life. I will not stand in the way of that, though I admit I still struggle with what happened. But you are my daughter, Clara. I am sorry I let my disappointment blind me to that fact. It was not exactly a warm reconciliation, but it was something. Clara embraced her father, and Logan saw Charles's stern expression crack slightly as he held his daughter. "Be well, Clara," Charles said, "and you, Mr. Webster, take care of them." "I will," Logan promised. "You have my word." They married 2 weeks later in the small church in Redemption Creek. Logan had expected the townspeople to boycott, to turn out in protest. Instead, to his surprise, the church was half full. Tommy and Jack were there, along with several other ranchers who did business with Logan. Mr. Dalton came, without his wife but with an apologetic expression. Even a few of the women who had scorned Clara attended, looking curious and slightly ashamed. Clara wore a simple white dress that Logan had purchased in Helena, her brown hair crowned with wildflowers that Emma kept trying to grab. Emma herself wore a new baby dress and made happy gurgling sounds throughout the ceremony, much to everyone's amusement. Reverend Thomas performed the service, his voice warm despite having been pressured by Mrs. Patterson to refuse. "Love," he said, looking directly at Logan and Clara, "is God's greatest gift to us. It asks us to see past surface judgments to the truth underneath. It asks us to be vulnerable, to risk hurt in pursuit of connection." These two young people understand that. They have both known hardship and judgment, yet they choose to build a life together based on hope and faith. May we all learn from their courage. When Logan kissed Clara as the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, he heard a few gasps from the more conservative attendees. He did not care. He held his wife close and felt, for the first time in 3 years, genuinely happy. The wedding supper was held at the ranch, with the few friends they had gathered pitching in to create a celebration. Someone brought a fiddle, and there was dancing in the yard as the sun set. Logan held Clara in his arms, swaying to the music, Emma between them in her sling, and thought about how impossibly far they had both come. "Are you happy?" he murmured against Clara's hair. "I did not know happiness like this existed," she replied, her eyes shining. "A month ago I was sleeping in a lean-to with nowhere to go and no hope. Now I am married to the kindest man I have ever met, with a home and a future. It feels like a dream." "It is real," Logan promised. "This is real and it is ours, and I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice." "I know I did." Clara reached up and kissed him softly. "You saw me, Logan. Really saw me when everyone else looked away. That is not something I will ever forget." "You saw me too," Logan said. "Saw past my walls to the man I wanted to be but was too scared to try for. You made me believe in second chances." That night, after the guests had departed and Emma was tucked safely in the crib Logan had moved into their bedroom, Logan and Clara lay together in the bed they would now share. The window was open, letting in the cool night breeze and the sound of crickets. "Tell me about her," Clara said softly, "the woman who left you." Logan was quiet for a moment, then began. "Her name was Sarah. We had been courting for 6 months. I thought she loved me. I thought we wanted the same things. But on our wedding day, she sent her sister with a note saying she had eloped with a banker from San Francisco. No explanation, no apology, just gone. That must have hurt terribly." "It did, but I think what hurt worse was the humiliation. Standing in front of the whole town, realizing everyone knew before I did, I felt like a fool. I vowed never to let anyone close enough to hurt me that way again." Clara propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "I am glad you broke that vow. For both our sakes." "So am I." Logan reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sarah did not break me, I realize now. I broke myself by letting her actions define me, by choosing isolation over risk. You healed that, Clara. You showed me that walls keep out pain, but they also keep out everything good." "We healed each other," Clara said. "You gave me back my dignity when the world had stripped it away. You made me believe I could be more than my mistakes." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had been dismissed and judged by the world, now building a future together based on mutual respect and love. The months that followed were not without challenges. Mrs. Patterson continued to sniff disapprovingly whenever she saw Clara in town. Some of the women remained distant, unwilling to fully accept someone they had already condemned. But gradually, through Clara's persistent kindness and Logan's unwavering support, opinions began to shift. Clara started a small sewing business, taking in mending and alterations. Her work was excellent, and practical need eventually overcame social prejudice. Women who would not acknowledge her on the street began appearing at the ranch with torn dresses and curtains that needed hemming. Clara welcomed them all with grace, never mentioning their past coldness. Emma grew from a baby into a toddler, full of energy and laughter. She had her mother's brown eyes and her own fierce personality, and she adored Logan completely. Hearing her call him Papa for the first time broke something open in Logan's chest, flooding him with love he had not known he could feel. The ranch continued to thrive. Logan's reputation as a fair dealer and excellent horseman spread throughout Montana Territory. He hired more men, expanded the corrals, and began breeding his own stock. Clara managed the household accounts with surprising skill, her mathematical mind proving invaluable to the business side of ranching. They built a life together that was practical and passionate, grounded in shared work and mutual respect. They had arguments, of course. Clara had a stubborn streak that clashed with Logan's tendency to make unilateral decisions. But they learned to talk through conflicts, to compromise, to remember that they were on the same side. One evening in early autumn, about 8 months after their wedding, Clara found Logan on the porch watching the sunset. She sat beside him and took his hand. "I have news," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Logan looked at her, concern immediate. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, everything is perfect," Clara smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. "I am pregnant, Logan. We are going to have a baby." Joy hit Logan like a physical force. He pulled Clara into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "Are you certain?" "I am certain. Due in late spring, I think." Logan thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. His heartbreak and her scandal, his walls and her desperation, the chance encounter that had saved them both, and now this. A child they would create together, a symbol of the love that had grown between two people the world had tried to break. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I love you so much, Clara." "I love you too. More than I ever thought possible." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, holding hands and imagining the future. Emma played in the yard, chasing chickens and laughing. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. The ranch stretched out before them, solid and real and theirs. The next spring brought twin boys, healthy and loud and perfect. Logan delivered them himself with the help of a midwife from town, and the experience of watching Clara bring their children into the world left him in awe. She was so strong, so brave. She faced the pain with the same quiet determination she brought to everything. They named the boys James and Henry, after Logan's father and Clara's grandfather. Emma was delighted to have brothers, though she quickly established herself as the boss of the trio. The town of Redemption Creek threw a celebration when the babies were born, a complete reversal from the condemnation Clara had faced just a year and a half earlier. Mrs. Patterson even brought a baby quilt, though she still could not quite meet Clara's eyes when she offered it. "People change slowly," Clara said to Logan that night as they watched over their sleeping children, "but they do change." "We proved that." "You proved it," Logan corrected. "You never let their judgment make you bitter. You just kept being yourself, kept showing grace and kindness. You won them over without compromising who you are." "I had help," Clara leaned against his shoulder. "I had someone who believed in me even when I could not believe in myself. That made all the difference." As the children grew, so did the ranch and their place in the community. Logan became one of the most respected ranchers in Montana Territory. Clara's sewing business expanded into a full dress shop in town, employing 2 other women and providing quality clothing at fair prices. They built an addition onto the main house to accommodate their growing family, adding bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Emma proved to have a natural gift with horses, often following Logan around the corrals and asking endless questions. The twins were Wilder, always getting into mischief, but good-hearted boys who adored their mother. Clara managed them all with patient firmness, somehow maintaining order while still allowing them to be children. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Clara with a trip to Helena for a proper celebration. They left the children with Tommy Wilson's wife, who had become a close friend, and spent 3 days in the territorial capital. They ate at fancy restaurants, attended a theatrical performance, and stayed in a hotel where they could sleep late and be alone together. On their last evening, they walked along the main street as the sun set, hand in hand like young sweethearts. "Do you remember when we met?" Logan asked. "You were scrubbing floors in the mercantile, and those awful women were saying terrible things." "I remember. I thought you were just another man who would judge me. I never imagined you would become everything to me." Logan stopped walking and turned to face her. At 30, he was still lean and strong, though he had learned to smile more easily. Clara at 26 was more beautiful than ever, her face fuller and softer, her eyes bright with contentment. "You changed my life," Logan said. "I was dying slowly, alone in that ranch house, convinced that isolation was safety. You showed me that connection is what makes life worth living. You taught me about second chances, about seeing past mistakes to the person underneath. You made me better." Clara touched his face tenderly. "You saved me, Logan." "Literally saved me? I had nothing and nowhere to go. You gave me work and shelter, yes, but more than that, you gave me dignity. You looked at me and saw potential when everyone else saw shame. You changed how I saw myself." "We saved each other," Logan said, "two broken people who found healing in the most unlikely place." They kissed there on the street in Helena, not caring who saw or what anyone thought. They had earned this happiness through hard work and faith and the courage to risk vulnerability. They had built something real and lasting from the wreckage of their pasts. The years continued to unfold with the rhythm of ranching life. Springs brought foaling season and planting. Summers meant long days of work under the big Montana sky. Autumns brought harvest and preparation for winter. Winters were quiet and cozy. The family gathered around the fireplace while snow fell outside. They had 2 more children, another girl and then finally another boy, rounding out their family at 6 children total. The ranch required a larger crew, and Logan built several more cabins to house the families that came to work for them. The Webster Ranch became known throughout the territory as a fair place to work, where effort was rewarded and families were welcomed. Clara's dress shop in town expanded into a general store that sold fabric, notions, and household goods. She proved to have a keen business sense, and the store became one of the most successful establishments in Redemption Creek. The town that had once scorned her now depended on her business savvy and fair dealing. Mrs. Patterson, perhaps most surprising of all, became something resembling a friend. She never explicitly apologized for her early cruelty, but she sought out Clara's advice on matters large and small and defended her fiercely if anyone dared bring up the old scandal. "People change," Clara had said. And sometimes they do. Emma grew into a beautiful young woman who could ride and rope as well as any man, and who eventually took over much of the ranch's horse training. The twins went east to college, then returned to Montana to help expand the family business. The younger children were still growing, but they all showed the same combination of strength and kindness that defined their parents. On a warm summer evening 20 years after that first meeting in the mercantile, Logan and Clara sat on their porch watching the sunset, much as they had done countless times before. Their hair was touched with gray now, their hands marked by years of work, but they still reached for each other with the same affection. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Clara asked. "If you had not offered me that job, if you had listened to Mrs. Patterson and stayed away from the scandalous woman." Logan pulled her closer. "I think about it sometimes, and I am grateful every day that I followed my instinct instead of convention. You were the best decision I ever made, Clara Webster. Even when I am stubborn and argue with you about ranch management." "Especially then," Logan laughed. "I need someone to keep me honest, to challenge me. You have always done that." They watched as Emma rode in from the far pastures, the twins visible in the distance mending fence, the younger children playing in the yard. This life they had built together, this family and ranch and community, had grown from the smallest seed. One man seeing potential in a woman everyone else ignored. "We floored them, did we not?" Clara said softly. "All those people who said I was ruined, who said you were a fool for taking me in." We proved them all wrong. We did more than that, we proved that love can overcome judgment, that second chances are worth giving, that the frontier is not just a place of hardship but also of possibility. Logan kissed the top of her head. We built a home here, Clara, a real home full of love and laughter, that is worth more than any amount of gold. It is everything, Clara agreed, everything I never dared dream I could have. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, Logan held his wife close and counted his blessings. He had come so close to missing all of this, to staying locked behind walls of fear and cynicism. But one moment of compassion, one decision to see past the surface to the person underneath, had changed everything. The town of Redemption Creek had been shocked when the handsome young rancher proposed to the disgraced young mother. They had gossiped and judged and predicted disaster, but Logan and Clara had built something stronger than gossip, more lasting than judgment. They had built a love that transformed not just themselves but everyone around them. Their story became legend in Montana territory, the cowboy who saw potential in a woman everyone else ignored, and the love that floored the town and changed it forever. It was a story about second chances and the courage to risk connection, about seeing people for who they truly are rather than who the world says they should be, about building happiness from heartbreak and family from scandal. Most of all, it was a story about love, the kind that heals wounds, bridges divides, and proves that even on the harsh frontier, even among broken people with painful pasts, redemption and joy are always possible. As night fell over the ranch and the stars emerged one by one in the vast Montana sky, Logan and Clara remained on their porch, hands intertwined, surrounded by the life they had created together. Their children's laughter drifted through the open windows. The horses moved peacefully in their corrals. The land stretched out around them, fertile and productive, and theirs. They had found what they were searching for, what they had needed all along. A home, not just a physical place, though the ranch was that, but a home in each other, a safe harbor in a harsh world, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. And in the morning they would wake up together and do it all again. Building, growing, loving, living the life they had fought so hard to create. Together, as they would remain for all the years to come, two souls who had found in each other exactly what the world said they did not deserve. A happy ending, the end.